What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deeper Dive CFB. Today I'm going to be giving you my Week 11 preview show. Obviously, it's headlined by Alabama versus LSU, but there's plenty of other good games such as Penn State, Minnesota. Like I said, plenty of other good games. So I'm going to go through my ESPN College Pick'em picks first. I'll give you those, but be sure to stay tuned after that because I will have a few other games that I do want to note heading into Week 11. With that, guys, like always, I'll leave time markers in the description below so you can navigate your way through this video. But let's get right into it.
Yeah, and I'll be right here in my spot with a little more cash than I already got. Tripping off you because you had your shot with my skin tan.
Alright, guys, starting with LSU and Alabama. Set up to be the game of the century now that LSU finally has a great offense. But I'm going to go with the Alabama Crimson Tide to pull off a huge win at home and solidify their chances to make the playoff with my 1-point pick. So as I promised you guys, I am going to devote a full video to this LSU-Alabama game, breaking that down, giving you my prediction there. Obviously, I did pick Alabama in this game, but I'm going to save that video till Friday. I'm going to save everything till then. One thing I will say, though, before that video is mentioned, and something I want to mention now, Tua Tagovailoa, Nick Saban said it's looking like he's going to play. He actually said he's made major strides these last few days, so something to note there. Obviously, if Tua is not going to play, and Bama would have Mac Jones in there, my pick would probably change, but at the end of the day, it does look like Tua is going to play. And also, it's not like they can't adjust their offense to maybe tailor to his injury. They can use more of an air raid type system. They have plenty of athletes. They have a good run game, so I am going to go with the Tide in this one, but I'm going to save the rest of my commentary there until Friday. I'll have the video out Friday. Next, guys, with my 2-point pick and kind of an upset pick, I've got TCU beating Baylor at home in a huge rivalry game. Baylor's obviously got to be feeling pretty disrespected at this point. Put at number 12 behind Florida and Auburn, who both have 2 losses. But at the end of the day, I think the committee noted that they haven't played an opponent that's currently ranked in the top 25. They also have no Power 5 games on their schedule. And on that note, they only won at Rice by 8. And the last time I checked, Rice hadn't won a game, so that's not a good look for Baylor. Do have solid road wins at Oklahoma State and at Kansas State. Won both those games pretty easily, and both those teams are starting to play really good football here as the season comes to a close. But at the end of the day, they've tested their luck way too many times. Like I said, against Rice, they only won that game 21-13. They almost gave up a 20-point lead against Iowa State at home. They're winning that game 20-0 after 3 quarters. Iowa State comes marching back. Luckily, Charlie Brewer was able to muster together one more drive, and they won 23-21. It also took 2 overtimes for them to beat Texas Tech. And Texas Tech is right there with Kansas at the bottom of the conference. And then last week, they only beat West Virginia by 3. So it's not like Baylor's just come out and dominated. I think if they had done that, they probably would have been higher. They have gotten a little lucky and a little fortunate, but I think that ends this week. TCU is one of those teams that can both beat anybody and lose to anybody. I think they're going to step up in this game. They're 4-4, but in most of those losses, turnovers have been a huge problem. They had 4 turnovers in their loss last week against Oklahoma State. They had 2 in their loss to Iowa State, and they had 3 against SMU when they lost that game at home. Max Duggan, their quarterback, is just a freshman, and I think with time, he's only gotten better. Played really well against Texas a few weeks ago in that win. One thing to note in this game, Max Duggan is not at 100%. Watching the end of that TCU versus Oklahoma State game, an Oklahoma State defensive lineman came and bull rushed him and somehow hurt his hand on his helmet. Not exactly sure what the injury is, but Max Duggan is not 100%, and that comes at a really bad time for the Horned Frogs because their quarterback depth is shot. Backup quarterback Alex Delton, who was a transfer from Kansas State, saw playing time there. He actually left the team today. I'm filming this on Wednesday. And then third-string quarterback Michael Collins, he's a transfer from Penn. We saw him a little bit last year. He's hurt as well, so quarterback depth could be an issue for TCU, but at the end of the day, I still see them winning this game. They have a great running back in Darius Anderson. I think they'll be able to use him. I'm not saying Baylor's bad. They've obviously earned their 8-0. They've definitely overachieved to this point, and at the end of the day, this is a rivalry game. These two teams do not like each other. Gary Patterson's obviously a very intense coach. I think he's going to have his team motivated, and that's why I'm going with TCU to pull off the upset against undefeated Baylor. Next game, guys, Penn State at Minnesota. 2 undefeated teams in the Big Ten clashing it out, but I'm going to go with Penn State to go on the road into Minneapolis and beat the Golden Gophers with my 3-point pick. This is probably the second best matchup of the week. 2 teams in the Big Ten, 8-0. Minnesota obviously didn't get a ton of love from the committee, being number 17 while being undefeated, and here's why. First 4 weeks of the season, they played one Power 5 opponent, and that was Purdue, who's now 3-6. They still didn't win one game by more than 1 possession. Some of their non-conference games included South Dakota State, that was a close finish, Georgia Southern, and Fresno State. So playing only Group of 5 schools certainly contributes to the fact that they're not getting respect, but they also didn't dominate against them. Give them credit. Their last 4 games, all conference games, they won every single one of these games handily, but you have to look at their opponents. They played Nebraska, Rutgers, Illinois, and Maryland. and they haven't played a top 25 game all year. Meanwhile, Penn State's beaten Iowa, they beat Michigan, and they went on the road and beat Michigan State all in these past 3 weeks. I think playing in those type of caliber games is going to prepare them well to go on the road to Minnesota. I think that road win at Iowa is probably a tougher environment than it will be going on the road into Minneapolis. I'm not saying it's not going to be close. I think Tanner Morgan, the quarterback from Minnesota, has played great this year. Their running back Rodney Smith, he's almost at 900 yards rushing. So I'm not saying Minnesota's bad. I don't think they've proven enough though to be picked in this game, and that's why I'm going with Penn State to go on the road, improve to 9-0, and get a big win against Minnesota. With my 4-point pick, guys, I'm going with Texas to get back on track and get a huge home win against Kansas State. Texas has climbed up to be a 7-point favorite in this one, and honestly, I don't agree with that. Kansas State's been on fire the last few weeks, beat TCU, got the huge upset against Oklahoma at home, and then looked very impressive last week against Kansas. Skylar Thompson's feet last week were the huge difference. He had 127 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. They had running back Harry Trotter step in last week for the injured James Gilbert. He had 22 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. And also, the Wildcats expect to get James Gilbert back in this one. He had over 100 yards against OU, so getting Gilbert back would be a huge weapon for the Wildcats. However, the reason I am going with Texas in this one is because they are coming off a bye, and I think they still have that bad taste in their mouth with the 37-27 loss at TCU 2 weeks ago. Sam Ehlinger has proven he's a great quarterback, but he did not play well against TCU. He had 4 interceptions. Tom Herman came out and said they weren't all on him. Whether they were on him or not, 4 picks by your name never looks good, and I think Ehlinger is going to come back motivated to get back on the right note. They'll also have Brennan Eagles back at wide receiver, suspended for the last game for missing a team function during the week. Not having him against TCU proved to be huge because some of those 50-50 balls that got picked, Brennan Eagles is a big body, definitely could have come down with those. So getting Brennan back will definitely be a big factor. And last for the Longhorns, their defense is going to get a huge boost. They'll get a ton of starters back coming off injury. Number 1 guy is Caden Stearns. Started every game last year as a freshman. Was a freshman All-American. He's kind of been dealing with injuries all year, and we haven't seen him since the Oklahoma State game, so he's missed 4 games. Next guy is BJ Foster, hard-hitting safety. He actually plays nickelback this year, and I think the big reason getting BJ Foster back is going to be huge for Texas. It's not only that Foster is a great player in his own regard, but also Brandon Jones, senior safety for Texas. While Foster was out, Jones had to slide into the nickelback spot, and that's just not his natural position. So I think getting Foster back, moving Jones back to safety, definitely going to be big for Texas. They'll also get DeMarvio and Overshone back, who's another defensive back, as well as starting cornerback Jalen Green. Green came back a little bit against TCU, but wasn't fully 100%. At the end of the day, all teams go through injuries, but the reason that this has hurt the Longhorns so bad is it's all coming in one unit. It's all defensive backs. So I think getting some of those guys healthy is certainly going to help. It's not an excuse, guys. I was as mad as the next guy after the TCU game, but kind of looking back, it's definitely a reason. And I think getting these guys back is going to be huge. I think the Longhorns are going to get back in a groove with a solid win against a good Kansas State team. With my 5-point pick, guys, I've got Herm Edwards and Arizona State beating USC at home. Both these teams are not playing their best football. Arizona State's coming off 2 road losses to Utah and UCLA. Much like USC, they're going through growing pains with their freshman quarterback, Jaden Daniels. But I think a big factor in this one, USC is now at 5-4, and I think all the rumors about Clay Helton and trying to bring in a new head coach, I think they might fold here. Having so much uncertainty around that program, it's certainly got to be wearing on those players. They're also dealing with a ton of injuries at running back. They're putting their 4th-string running back against Oregon. I think it's putting way too much pressure on their freshman quarterback, Keaton Slovis. Like I said, he had 57 attempts against Oregon, way too much there. Arizona State's also coming off a bye. Having an experienced coach like Herm Edwards, who's coached in the NFL, I think he's going to have his guys ready to go. And their freshman quarterback, Jaden Daniels, has certainly shown flashes. Best game came against Washington State. He had 363 yards passing and 4 total touchdowns against no picks. They also have a great running back in Eno Benjamin. He's a stud. He has 883 scrimmage yards this year and 9 total touchdowns. Arizona State right now is the more balanced team. Like I said, I think USC might be a little bit down in the dumps, and that's why I'm going to go with the Sun Devils at home. Next game, 2 6-2 teams in the Big Ten West. I'm going to go with Wisconsin to defend their home turf, get back on track, and win this game against Iowa with my 6-point pick. Both these teams had great starts to the season, but have definitely fallen off a little bit. Starting with Wisconsin, they started the season 6-0. That included 4 shutouts, so defense looked really good, but just had an inexcusable loss at Illinois. Lost that game 24-23, and then they went on the road and lost to Ohio State, but didn't really compete in that game. It was 38-7. As for Iowa, they started the year 4-0, had a good road win at Iowa State, but they've lost 2 tough games since then, at Michigan and versus Penn State. They do have 2 straight wins since those back-to-back losses, but they only beat Purdue 26-20, and they were only able to put up 20 against a really bad Northwestern team. The offense has definitely sputtered a bit. This is going to be a defensive struggle either way you look at it. but certainly Wisconsin's offenses look better. Their quarterback Jack Cohn is completing 75% of his passes this season, opposed to the Iowa quarterback Nate Stanley just completing 61%. And then Wisconsin obviously has a huge advantage at running back. They have Jonathan Taylor. He's over 1,000 yards rushing, one of the best running backs in the nation, as opposed to Iowa's running backs. They don't even compare with him. I think combine all that with the fact that this game is going to be played in Camp Randall, I'm going to go with Wisconsin this one to get back on track and remain alive in the Big Ten West race. With my 7-point pick, guys, I've got Boise State beating Wyoming at home in a game that will be closer than the experts think. A lot of people are going to pick Boise State in this game just because they are a brand name, but Wyoming definitely deserves some respect. I mean, week 1 beat Missouri, and since then have won 3 out of 4 games, including a 31-3 win against Nevada. 2 weeks ago, Nevada beat Purdue week 1, so it's not like Nevada's some slouch. Still, Boise State got back freshman phenom quarterback Hank Bachmeier last week against San Jose State. Bachmeier's been a playmaker for them all year, and I think with him in the game, the Broncos are going to find a way to win. Also, running back George Halani had a monster game last week, like I mentioned in my recap video. He had 126 yards and 4 touchdowns, really took over the game for the Broncos in the second half, and were a huge reason why the Broncos were able to win that game on the road. Wide receiver John Hightower has been a huge deep threat for Bachmeier all year. I see Boise State winning this game for sure, but the line for this game is Boise State minus 13. I think it's going to be a closer game than that, especially for a majority of the game. Boise State might be able to tack on some points at the end and kind of make it look better than it is, but at the end of the day, guys, I see Boise State defending their home turf and beating Wyoming. Next game, Notre Dame's going to go on the road to play Duke, coming off a big win against Virginia Tech last week. I like the Irish big on the road with my 8-point pick. At the end of the day, Duke just hasn't proven to be consistent enough to make me pick them in this game. One week they look really good, and the next week they look awful. For example, they went on the road to Virginia Tech about a month ago, a team that Notre Dame struggled with, and they dominated that game. They won that game 45-10. But then on the other hand, they went on the road to Virginia and lost that game 48-14. Week 1 against Alabama, they couldn't even score a touchdown, and I think if there's one knock on Alabama, it's definitely their defense. But after that game, they followed that by scoring 40 points in 4 of their next 5 games. But now their last 2 games, they've only put up 14 and 17 in both those. But I think Duke is just way too hard to figure out. I would have no confidence if I picked them in this game. One other thing is I think Notre Dame's going to play a little looser after getting back in the win column. Ian Book's confidence has got to be through the roof after leading that game-winning drive last week against Virginia Tech. And honestly, I think if the offense can just clean up some of the turnover problems, which is really the only reason why Virginia Tech was in the game in the first place, I see no reason why they're not going to go win this game. I think they're going to do that, and that's why I'm going to go with the Irish on the road at Duke. With my 9-point pick, guys, I've got Oklahoma over Iowa State at home. I think they're going to bounce back off the bye week. Shouldn't have any problem in this one. Oklahoma's coming off a bye week. The last time they played was obviously in Manhattan, Kansas, and got shocked by K-State there. I think there's no doubt in my mind they're going to come ready to play in this one. They actually played really well for most of that game. They just had a series of turnovers and mistakes that really led to that loss. Jalen Hurts has been terrific all year, though, and he almost led Oklahoma back from 25 down to win at Kansas State, force an onside kick late in the game. So Jalen Hurts certainly got a lot of guts, and he's one of the more talented players in the country. So I don't think OU has anything to worry about here. Iowa State was a team I was very high on beginning of the year, but that game 2 weeks ago where they lost at home to Oklahoma State, their quarterback Brock Purdy, who's usually pretty consistent, he had 3 picks in that game. Their loss at Baylor also concerns me because while they were able to make that game close, they were shut out through 3 quarters. So this offense just seems a little bit inconsistent. Honestly, I think we're going to see OU get back to playing Sooner football, and that's why I'm going to go with OU to win this game big at home. And then lastly, guys, I've got Clemson going on the road and beating North Carolina State with my 10-point pick. No doubt about this one, guys. I got the final score at 42-13. Should not have any problem. North Carolina State's not a very good opponent, so I'm going to go with Clemson big in this one. Although North Carolina State is 4-4, they have 0% chance to win this game. They got blown out at West Virginia, who's not very good. They got blown out at Florida State under a Willie Taggart-led team. They got blown out at Boston College, who let Kansas come in and beat them pretty bad earlier in the year. They are 4-0 at home, but you have to look at the opponents there. They played East Carolina, West Carolina, Ball State, and Syracuse, who hasn't won a conference game. I think combine all that with the fact that Clemson is starting to look elite again. They've won their last 4 games by an average of 41 points. That's just dominant right there. Trevor Lawrence in his last 2 games has 6 touchdowns opposed to 0 picks. Travis Etienne is coming off a monster 212-yard game on just 9 touches. He has over 1,100 yards rushing this year. For all those reasons, guys, and with no doubt in my mind, I've got Clemson going on the road to Raleigh and winning big. That's going to wrap it up for my pick'em, guys, but I want to give you 3 other games to look for as we head into Week 11. First game is Louisville at Miami. If you remember, Miami is still in the ACC Coastal race. They will need some help from Virginia and Virginia Tech, but coming off a 27-10 win at Florida State, I think this is one to watch to see if the Canes can keep it rolling. They're 5-4. obviously have that motivation to, stay in the coastal race and become bowl eligible. Their quarterback, Jaron Williams, played fantastic last week. He had 313 yards and 2 deep touchdown passes. But don't get it twisted, guys. They're going to get a really good game from Louisville. The Cardinals are 5-3. They've won 3 out of their last 4. Their only loss out of that stretch came against Clemson. And 2 of those wins are against Virginia, who's now the #1 team in the Coastal, and Wake Forest, who's 7-1. I think Louisville's a huge threat to Miami, and this is going to be one that's interesting to see how it turns out. I'm not going to make a pick for any of these games that I'm going to mention, but certainly tune into that one. The next one I wanted to mention, guys, was Missouri at Georgia. Missouri technically controls their own destiny in the SEC East because they play Georgia and Florida the next 2 weeks. If they win both those games, they'd be #1. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think there's any way that happens. But what I am interested in this game is to see how Georgia plays and to see if they can continue to play what they did last week against Florida. The reason why that's so important is because they're going to go on the road and play Auburn next week. Auburn's going to be sharp coming off a bye week. Gus Malzahn's going to have his team ready to play in another big game. So I think that's why Georgia needs to come out and play really well against Missouri. Play clean, play turnover free, not really have this be such a high stress game because they're going to have to focus on that next week. Georgia came out at #6 in the selection committee's first rankings last night. Georgia has so much to play for, and I'm just looking out for them when I say they don't want to play a close game at Missouri because they're going to get Auburn's best next week. They want to be as fresh as possible going into that one. The last one I want to mention for Group of 5 ranking purposes is Appalachian State at South Carolina. Appalachian State is still 7-1, but with their loss last week to Georgia Southern, they were obviously left out of the initial college football playoff selection committee top 25. But the reason why this game is so important for Appalachian State is this is a really good chance for them to get a big win on the road and bolster their resume a little bit. South Carolina beating Georgia on the road in Athens, as well as playing Florida and Alabama close. If Appalachian State were to go on the road and beat South Carolina, I think the committee would cut them some slack for that Georgia Southern loss, and it would kind of balance things out a little bit. And you have to remember, they also beat North Carolina too, so 2 Power 5 wins for Appalachian State. Not many other Group of 5 teams can say that, so it's not totally unfathomable to think that they're going to be able to go in there and win this game. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I really hope y'all enjoyed. If you do, please be sure to hit the thumbs up below as well as the subscribe button. While you're doing that, turn on your post notifications. It's just that little bell right by the subscribe button. And the reason I want you to hit that bell is so y'all will be notified when I post a new video. I don't want you to miss that. But just to make sure you don't, follow me on all platforms. I have an Instagram and a Twitter. Both have the same handle. I'll leave it right here. It's at @deeperdive_CFB. One other thing, guys, just be sure to comment if y'all have any advice or feedback on how I can grow this channel. Open ears, guys. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to change things to make it more appealing to y'all. Or if you just want to comment about college football or just talk about it, you can DM me on either of my platforms, Twitter or Instagram, or comment below. I'm willing to interact and always want to talk college football. If you know anybody else that loves college football like we do, be sure to share this video with them. I would really appreciate that. With that, guys, that's all I got for you. Be on the lookout Friday for my LSU versus Alabama preview. I'm going to have a full breakdown of that game and explain why I did pick Alabama. So with that, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.